My daughter sat me down on a Thursday and told me, in the calmest voice I had ever heard come out of her mouth, that loving me had been the hardest job of her childhood. She was 22. She had practiced what she was going to say. I could tell because she didn't blink for the first 30 seconds. I want to be honest with you because there is no point in telling this story if I am not. My very first thought when she finished talking was not, oh God, what have I done? It was, she has this wrong. It was, I need to explain it to her so she can see it the way I see it. It was, I just need her to understand what I was trying to do. That instinct, that single instinct, almost cost me my child. This is the story of the year I spent learning that the bravest thing I would ever do as a mother was stop defending the woman I thought I had been. I'm not someone who set out to be a hard mother. I want to be clear about that. Not because it excuses anything, but because the people who hurt their children rarely look in the mirror and see someone capable of it. I certainly didn't. I grew up in a house where my mother, Verla, was technically present and emotionally somewhere else entirely. She would leave for the grocery store at 4 p.m. and come home at midnight, and when I asked her where she'd been, she would say, "I'm just being careful, Marin. I'm just being careful with myself." I was 9. I didn't know what that meant. I only knew that the kitchen light would be on, and my plate of dinner would be cold on the counter, and my mother's coat would still be missing from the hook by the door. So when I had Ren and I had her late, I was 38, and the doctors had told me twice it wouldn't happen. I made myself a promise. I made it out loud, in the hospital room, while she was still wet from being born. I whispered it into the top of her head. "You will never wonder where I am. You will never come home to a cold plate. You will never, ever wonder if I am thinking about you. I want you to hear that promise the way I meant it, because for a long time I thought that promise was love. I thought it was the whole shape of love. Ren was a quiet baby. She watched things. She had these enormous brown eyes, Theo's eyes, my husband's eyes, and she would track me across a room like she was making sure I was still there. People used to comment on it. "She's so attached to you," and I would smile and feel something warm crack open in my chest because I had done it. I had made a child who never had to wonder. When she was 7, she wanted a yellow raincoat. There was a yellow raincoat at the department store in Pine Brace. That's the town we lived in. A small place tucked into the foothills outside the city, and she stood in front of it like it was the most important thing in the world. And I said no. I said, "Yellow is too bright, sweetheart. You'll stand out." And she looked at me, and I remember this so clearly now, she said, "But I want to stand out." And I laughed and ruffled her hair and bought her a blue one instead. Because blue you can see in a crowd, because blue I could find. I am telling you about a raincoat because I did not understand for 15 years that I was telling her something about herself. When Ren was 9, I took the lock off her bedroom door. I told her it was because I'd read an article about kids who get locked in bathrooms during fires and can't get out. I told her it was for her safety. I remember the look on her face. Confusion, then something else, something I didn't let myself name. She nodded. She didn't argue. Ren almost never argued. "I'm just being careful," I told her. "I'm just being careful." I used that phrase a lot. I didn't realize whose mouth I had taken it from. My sister Corinne saw it. I know she did now, but she didn't say anything, and I don't blame her for that. Corinne and I had grown up in the same cold kitchen, and she had her own ways of surviving it. Mine was control. Hers was distance. We loved each other from across a long table, both of us. Theo, my husband. Theo was a gentleman, is a gentleman. He worked long hours at the regional hospital in administration, and he loved Ren in the easy, sun-warmed way that men with their own present fathers seem to be able to love. He would come home and toss her in the air when she was small. He would teach her to ride a bike. And when I would say, "Theo, not so high," he would slowly lower her down and look at me and say nothing. He said nothing for 22 years. I'll come back to that. Ren grew up. She got good grades. Of course she did, I made sure of that. She had friends, the right kind of friends, the kind whose parents I had vetted, whose houses I had been inside. She played soccer until she was 12 and then quit, and I told myself it was because she didn't love it, and not because I had stood at every practice on the sideline with my coat zipped to my chin watching her the whole time. She got into a good college. She picked 190 minutes away because I cried when she looked at schools further. I want to be honest about that too. Cried, and she changed her list. She came home every other weekend. She called me every night. She told me everything, or at least I thought she told me everything. And I felt so proud. I felt like I had broken the curse. I felt like I had taken what Verla did to me and turned it inside out and made it into something good, something safe, something my daughter would thank me for one day. That was the story I was living in. I want you to understand that, because what comes next only makes sense if you understand that I was living inside a story where I was the hero. She graduated in May. She moved back home for the summer. She said she was figuring out her next step, and I was so happy you have no idea. I had her under my roof again, and I made her breakfast every morning, and I asked her about her day every evening, and I thought, this is the gift. This is the gift I gave her. A mother she wants to come home to. In August, on a Thursday, she asked if we could talk. I remember exactly what she said, word for word. Because some words you never forget, no matter how badly you want to. She came downstairs at 7 in the evening. She had been upstairs for most of the day. I'd brought her a sandwich at lunch and she'd thanked me and closed the door, and even then, I felt the smallest pull of something. A door closed in this house felt unfamiliar. We didn't do closed doors. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, same table where she had done homework. Same table where I had read her stories. She had a notebook with her. That's what I noticed first. The notebook. She said, "Mom, I want to talk to you about something. I've been working up to it for a long time, and I need you to listen all the way through before you say anything. Can you do that for me?" And I said yes. Of course I said yes. I would have said yes to anything she asked me in that moment because I loved her so much it sometimes felt like a physical weight in my chest, and I wanted to give her whatever she needed. She opened the notebook, she looked down at it, and she said, "Your love feels like a cage I was born inside. I want to tell you exactly what happened in my body in that moment, because I think it matters." My ears got warm. That was the first thing. My ears got hot, like I was embarrassed, like I had been caught at something. Then my mouth went dry. Then I felt, and this is the part I'm most ashamed of, I felt my mind start to compose a response before she had spoken her second sentence. I was already explaining myself. In my head. While she was still talking, she said, "I'm not angry. I want you to hear that. I'm grieving. I'm grieving for a version of me that you never let exist, and I think you didn't know you were doing it, and I love you, and I cannot keep pretending I'm not." She said, "I have been in therapy for 2 years. I didn't tell you because I knew you would ask what we talked about, and I needed something in my life that was only mine." She said, "I quit soccer because you watched me. I came home every weekend because you cried. I am sitting here at 22 and I cannot tell you what I like and what I don't like because every preference I have ever expressed has been edited by what you would tolerate." She said, "You took the lock off my bedroom door when I was 9, Mom. I want you to think about that for a minute. I was 9 years old and you took the lock off my door, and I sat there. I sat there and I felt my mouth open and I heard myself say, 'Ren, sweetheart, that was for your safety. That was about a fire.'" And she closed her eyes. She closed her eyes and she said very quietly, "I knew you would say that. I knew it." And I felt, for the first time in my life as her mother, that I was watching her decide something about me. She kept talking. I'm not going to pretend I remember all of it cleanly because the truth is, after she said cage, I was listening from behind glass. I heard her, but I was already arguing, already explaining, already in some hidden room in the back of my head, telling myself she has this wrong. When she was done, she stood up. She put the notebook in her bag. She said, "I'm going to stay with Asa for a while. I'm not disappearing. I just need some space from this house. From you. I'll text you when I'm settled, Asa." I'd met Ataz twice. I'd had concerns. I'd voiced concerns. Of course I had. She walked to the door, and before she opened it, she turned around and she said one more thing. She said, "Mom, I'm not asking you to fix this tonight. I'm asking you not to call me tomorrow and try to." The door closed. I heard her car start. I heard it pull out of the driveway. I sat at that kitchen table for 2 hours. I made myself a cup of tea I didn't drink. I stared at the chair she had been sitting in, the one she had pulled out and not pushed back, and I had a single coherent thought the entire time. She has this wrong. I'll explain it to her. She'll see. That was the thought of a woman who had not yet understood anything. The first week I called her 3 times. She didn't pick up. She texted each time, "I love you. I asked you not to do this. Please respect it." The second week I didn't call. I'm proud of that. I want to give myself that one small thing, even though it's nothing. The third week, I did something I have not told anyone until right now. We had a family plan. One of those phone plans where you can see everyone's location. Ren had given me access years ago. She'd been 15, and I'd asked for it, and she'd shrugged and said, okay. She had never turned it off. She probably hadn't thought about it. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the grocery store in Pine Brace, and I opened the app, and I looked at the little dot that was my daughter. She was at a coffee shop 40 minutes away. I knew the coffee shop. I'd been there once. And I sat in my car and I cried, not because she was at a coffee shop, because I had just done, in real time, the exact thing she had told me about. I had checked, I had monitored, I had reassured myself by knowing where she was. She had asked me for space, and I had answered her by surveilling her, and I had told myself it was love. I deleted the app. I sat there for another 20 minutes, and I deleted the app, and I felt, God, this is going to sound dramatic, but I felt like I was cutting something out of my own hand. That was the first crack. I called Corinne, my sister. I hadn't talked to her in months. We were both bad at that, both of us raised by Verla, neither of us ever quite sure how sisters were supposed to call each other when nothing was on fire. She picked up on the third ring. I said, Cor. Ren left, she said, and I couldn't finish. I just started to cry, the way you cry when you have not let yourself cry for a long time, the kind of crying that scrapes out of you. Corinne was quiet for a while. Then she said something I have thought about every day since. She said, Maren, I've watched you do this for 15 years. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I told myself it wasn't my place. I told myself you'd hate me. I told myself you'd stop talking to me. But the truth is, I was scared of you. I have been scared of you for a very long time, scared of me. My sister who had stood beside me at our mother's funerals, who had held my hand through Ren's birth. Scared of me. I asked her what she meant, and she told me. Gently, slowly, the way you'd hands one bad news in pieces. She told me she had watched me stand at every soccer practice with my coat zipped up like I was guarding a perimeter. She had watched me text Ren during sleepovers 3-4 times a night, just checking in. She had watched me cry when Ren had picked her college, and she had watched Jandine change her list the next day, and she had watched the look on Ren's face when she did it. She said, Maren, that look. I have never forgotten that look, she said. You did better than Mom. I want you to know that. You did so much better than her. But you did it from the same place. You loved Ren the way Mom should have loved us. And it was too much. It was so much that there wasn't any room left for Ren to be a person inside of it. I want to tell you, I took that well. I did not take that well. I told Corinne she didn't know what she was talking about. I told her she didn't have kids, she couldn't understand. I told her it was different, that Ren had been a wanted child, a late child, a precious child. I gave her every justification I had. And Corinne, my quiet sister, just listened. When I was done, she said, okay, I love you. Call me when you're ready. She hung up. I sat in my car for another hour. The groceries melted in the trunk. That night, I asked Theo. I asked my husband, the gentle man, the man who had said nothing for 22 years, Theo. Did you see it? And Theo, my Theo, looked at me with the most tired face I have ever seen on a person, and he said, Maren, I let you do it because I was scared of you too. I don't think I had ever, in my entire marriage, looked at my husband and not recognized him. That night I did. He said, I knew. I knew when you took the lock off her door. I knew when you said no to the yellow raincoat. I knew. And I told myself it was because you loved her, and I told myself that intervening would make it worse, and I told myself you would soften over time, and you never did. You never did, Maren. You got tighter. And I watched it and I did nothing because I have always been afraid of upsetting you, he cried. Theo cried at the kitchen table. I had been married to him for 26 years, and I had seen him cry twice, at our wedding and at his father's funeral. This was the third time. I want to tell you that I held him. I want to tell you that I said the right thing. What I actually did was sit very still and feel something inside me start to crack along a line I hadn't known was there. It took me another 2 months before I could say, out loud, to myself, in the bathroom mirror, the sentence I needed to say. Ren was right. That's it. That's the whole sentence. Ren was right. You'd think it would be easy. It is the single hardest sentence I have ever said in my life. In those 2 months, I did a lot of things I'm not proud of. I want to tell you about one of them, because I think it matters. I went into Ren's bedroom, the room she had grown up in, the room without a lock. And I started going through her things, and I caught myself. I caught myself with my hand on her closet door, and I sat down on her bed, and I asked myself, out loud, what are you doing right now, Marin? What exactly are you doing? I was looking for evidence. That's what I was doing. I was looking for evidence that she was wrong, that there was something hidden in her room that would prove I had been right to watch her so closely, that would justify a single decision I had made. I was looking for the proof that would let me off the hook. I closed the closet. I left the room. I closed her door behind me, properly closed it for the first time in years, and I went downstairs and I called the therapist Corinne had recommended. I said, "My name is Marin. My daughter told me my love felt like a cage, and I think she might be right, and I don't know how to be a person if she's right." The therapist said, "That's a good place to start. I want to tell you about my mother. Verla, I have to, because if I don't, the rest of this doesn't make sense. In the attic, I found something. I was up there looking for old photos. I had this idea that I would put together pictures of Wren's childhood, that I would somehow prove with photographs that she had been happy, that I would show her and she would see. I want to be clear, I still, even then, 2 months in, was looking for ways to argue with my own daughter. I found a box. It was mine. It had been signed for 40 years. I had forgotten about it. Inside the box was a journal. I had kept it when I was 12. I'd had a teacher who told us all to write down our feelings, and I had written, in my looping 12-year-old handwriting, about my mother, about waiting for her, about the cold plates, about the kitchen light, about the missing coat. And on the last page, in handwriting so pressed down the pen had nearly torn through the paper, I had written, "When I have a daughter, I will never leave her alone. She will always know where I am. She will never have to wonder. I will be there. I will be there. I will be there." I sat on the floor of my attic and I read that sentence 3 times. I had kept the promise. I had kept it so completely, so totally, that I had not understood I was making my daughter pay for my mother's absence. I had taken the wound my mother gave me and I had pressed it into Wren in the opposite shape, and I had called it love. And it had been love, but it had also been, God help me, it had also been a debt I was collecting from the wrong person. That was the moment something in me actually broke. Not cracked, broke. I am not going to pretend I became a different woman that afternoon. I didn't. I went downstairs and I made dinner and I sat across from Theo, and I didn't say a word about the journal. I put it in a drawer in my nightstand. I didn't tell my therapist about it for another 6 weeks, but something started moving in me that day. Something that had been frozen for a long time. I want to be careful telling this part. I want to be careful because the temptation, when you've done the kind of work I had to do, is to make yourself the hero of the recovery. To turn the journey into a montage. To skip over the months of small, ugly, daily realizations and arrive at the part where you've grown. I'm not going to do that. Because the truth is, I changed slowly. I changed by inches. I changed in ways that even now I'm not sure are finished. Here is what actually happened. I started therapy in late October. By January, my therapist, her name was Mireille, and she was patient with me in a way I have never deserved, asked me a question that I have not stopped thinking about since. She said, "Marin, when you imagine Wren as a child, what is she doing?" I started to answer. I said, "She's at the kitchen table, she's drawing, and Mireille said, "Where are you in this picture?" I thought about it. I said, I'm watching her." Mireille said, "And when you imagine yourself as a child, what is your mother doing?" I said, "She's not there." And Mireille said, "So you have given Wren the opposite of what hurt you, but you have not given her what she actually needs." I sat with that for a long time. I sat with it in her office, and then in my car, and then for days, and then for weeks. What Wren had needed was not for me to watch her. What Wren had needed was for me to see her. I had been so busy doing the opposite of what Verla had done that I had never asked whether the opposite of neglect was actually love. It isn't. It isn't, and I want anyone who is listening to this and who recognizes themselves in it to hear that part again. The opposite of neglect is not love. The opposite of neglect is just a different way of not seeing your child. In February, I wrote Wren a letter. I didn't send it. Mireille told me not to send it. She told me the letter was for me, not for Wren, and she told me, kindly but firmly, that I had not earned the right to ask anything of Wren yet, even the right to be read by her. I want to read you a piece of that letter because it is the closest I have ever come to saying the truth out loud. I wrote, "Wren, I have spent 4 months trying to understand what I did to you. I keep getting caught on the same problem. I love you. I have loved you completely for 22 years. And I do not know how to reconcile the fact that loving you was, at the same time, the thing that hurt you the most. I keep wanting to ask you to understand that the love was real. And then I realize, the love being real is not the point. You were not asking me to prove the love was real. You were telling me that the love, real as it was, had a shape that hurt you. And the shape is mine. The shape is mine, and the hurt is yours. And I have spent 22 years asking you to carry the shape because I was so afraid of what would happen if I put it down. I am putting it down now. I do not know who I am without it. I am scared. I am writing this letter because it is the first letter I have ever written you that is not also asking you for something. I love you. That is all this letter is. I love you, and I am sorry, and I am not asking you to come home. I want to be honest. I read that letter to Morel, and I cried for 40 minutes. She didn't say anything. She just let me cry. That was, I think, the first time in my entire life that someone had let me feel something without trying to fix it. That was something I had never given Ren, not once, not in 22 years. In March, Ren texted me, out of nowhere, 7 months after she walked out of the kitchen. The text said, "Mom, I'm not coming home yet. But I'd like to know how you are. I want to tell you what I almost did. I almost wrote back a paragraph. I almost wrote back an apology. I almost wrote back 1,000 words explaining everything I had been working on. Every session, every book, every realization. I almost, and I cannot stress this enough, I almost made her text about me. I sat with my phone for an hour. I called Morel. I said, "What do I write?" Morel said, "What does Ren need right now?" I said, "I don't know." Morel said, "Then ask her." I wrote back, "I'm working on myself. I would love to know how you are too. No pressure. Take your time." That was it. 7 words about me. 12 about her. Ren wrote back 2 days later. "Thank you. I'm okay. I'll be in touch." And I held my phone in my hand and I sat at the kitchen table, and I felt, for the first time in 7 months, something that wasn't quite hope, but was adjacent to it. I felt my daughter's right to her own pace. I had never, in 22 years, given her that. Here is the part that I think is the heart of this story. The thing I want to leave with you, if you take nothing else. In April, I noticed I had been holding my breath. Not metaphorically, physically. I caught myself in the car at a red light and I realized I had been breathing very shallowly for, I don't know how long, days, weeks, maybe years. I started paying attention to it. And I realized I held my breath when I was waiting for Ren to text. I held my breath when I drove past her old school. I held my breath when I saw a girl who looked like her on the street. I had been holding my breath in some form since the day she was born. Because the deal I had made with myself, that I would always be there, that I would never let her wonder, was a deal that required constant vigilance. And vigilance, it turns out, is a kind of held breath. You cannot exhale and watch at the same time. You cannot relax and be on guard. I had been on guard for 22 years. And here is what I realized, sitting at that red light. The reason I held my breath was the exact same reason my mother held hers. We were both waiting for something terrible to happen. The difference was that my mother had survived hers by leaving the house. I had survived mine by never letting my daughter out of my sight. We were doing the same thing, from opposite directions. We were both refusing to be present. I started to exhale after that, just small things. I started to let Ren silence be Ren silence and not a referendum on me. I started to leave the kitchen light off at night. I started to take walks without my phone. It is the strangest thing in the world to realize that the thing you thought was love was actually fear with very good manners. In May, almost a year after that Thursday, Ren came home. She didn't ask, she didn't announce it. She texted me on a Wednesday and said, "Can I come by Saturday? Just for a couple hours. I want to talk. I want to tell you what I felt. I want to be honest about it." The first thing I felt was a wild, irrational animal joy. She is coming home. She is coming home. This is going to be okay. And right behind that joy, the old engine started. The planning. What do I cook? What do I wear? What do I say? How do I show her how much I've changed? What evidence do I have? What proof can I? I sat down on the bed. I closed my eyes. I said out loud to my empty bedroom, "This visit is not about you, Marin." That sentence, I had been practicing that sentence in therapy for months. This is not about me. It is, I think, the sentence my mother never said, and the sentence I had never said. And the sentence that, if I could go back and put one thing in the water, at the moment of Ren's birth, I would put that sentence. On Saturday, Ren arrived at 3. She drove herself. She had a yellow rain jacket on. I noticed it. I noticed it the second she got out of the car, and I felt something in my chest pull, because it was the first time in her entire life I had seen her in yellow. I want you to understand what that meant. When she was 7, I had bought her a blue raincoat because yellow was too easy to lose sight of. Now she was 22, and she had bought herself a yellow one, and she was walking up my driveway in it. I almost said something. I almost said, "Oh, you're wearing yellow." And I caught myself mid-breath, and I just smiled. I just said, "Hi, sweetheart, come in." She came in. She didn't hug me. I didn't ask for one. We sat at the kitchen table, same chair even. She pulled out the same chair she had pulled out a year ago. I noticed. She noticed it too. Neither of us said anything. She said, "Mom, I'm not here to forgive you." I said, "Okay." She said, "I'm here because I want to tell you something, and I want you to hear it without responding." "Can you do that?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I've spent a year learning who I am without you watching. And it has been the hardest year of my life. And the second hardest thing about it has been everything I've discovered about myself that I like. The hardest thing has been realizing that I would not have discovered any of it if I had stayed." She said, "I don't hate you. I want you to hear that. I love you. I have always loved you. But I needed you to understand that loving someone and not letting them be a person are two different things. And you did not understand that, and you almost broke me, Mom. You almost broke me." She said, "Asa is good for me. I'm working at a bookstore. I'm taking a class in ceramics. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, and for the first time, that not knowing belongs to me. It's not a problem for you to solve. It's mine," she said. "I am telling you all of this because Kareen told me you have been doing the work, and I wanted you to know that I see it. I'm not ready to come back yet. I might not be ready for a long time. But I see you trying, and I needed to say that out loud to you." She stopped. She looked at me. "And I want you to understand in the size of what I'm about to tell you. I did not say anything. I did not defend. I did not explain. I did not list everything I had done. I did not tell her about the journal or about Mirel or about the morning I had spent crying on the bathroom floor at 6 a.m. because I had finally understood what I had taken from her. I sat, and I let it be hers, the whole moment. Hers. After what felt like a very long time, I said, "Thank you for telling me. That's it." 4 words. She nodded. She started to cry quietly. I started to cry. We didn't move. We didn't reach for each other. We just cried at the same table. And this is the moment I will carry to my grave. She said, "Mom, you're not holding your breath." I hadn't realized. I said, "No, I'm trying not to." She said, "I can tell." And she stood up. She came around the table and she hugged me. She hugged me for the first time in a year, and she said into my hair, "I love you, Mom. I'm not coming home yet. But I love you." She left an hour later. She drove away in her yellow raincoat. I stood at the window and I watched her car until it turned at the end of the street, and then I made myself look away. Made myself. It was the smallest, hardest thing. I went back to the kitchen. I looked at the chair she had been sitting in. She had pushed it back in this time. I left it there. It is now 2 years after that Thursday. Ren has not moved back home. I don't think she ever will, and I have stopped wanting her to. We see each other once a month, sometimes more. She comes to dinner. She brings Asa, who I am slowly learning to know. Not vet, no. There is a difference. I am still learning the difference. Theo and I are in couples therapy. We are learning how to be 2 people instead of 1 frightened woman and 1 quiet man. It is harder than I expected. It is better than I deserved. Corinne calls me every Sunday now. We talk about Verla sometimes. We talk about what she did to us and what we did with what she did. We are sisters again. In the real sense, we had to grow up first. I am 60 years old. I should have done this work 20 years ago. I should have done it before I had a child. I want to be honest about that because if anyone listening to this has young children or is thinking about having them, please do the work first. Please do not make them pay for what your parents did to you. Please do not call your held breath love. I used to think that protecting my daughter meant watching her. I thought love was a kind vigilance. I thought that if I just stayed alert enough, present enough, attentive enough, I could keep her safe from everything that had hurt me. I know better now. I know that protecting someone is not the same as controlling them. I know that watching someone is not the same as seeing them. I know that being there for your child does not mean being on top of them. I know that the bravest thing a parent can ever do is let their child be a person in front of them, separate, mysterious, free, and love them anyway. I know that you cannot give a child what you were not given. You can only give them what you have done the work to find inside yourself. The kitchen light is off at night now. The plate is not waiting on the counter. The chair is pushed in. The door does not lock. I never put the lock back on, and I won't, because that is not mine to give back. That is Wren's, if she ever wants to come home and put it on herself. But the door is closed when she's not here, and I let it be closed, and I let her be wherever she is, and I let myself not know. I let myself not know. That, I have come to understand, is the work of being a mother. Not knowing, not watching, not being careful, the way my mother says it and the way I said it after her, just loving. With your hands open, with your eyes on the person in front of you, instead of the disaster you are trying to prevent. I am still learning. I will be learning until the day I die. But last week, Rin texted me a picture of a bowl she made in her ceramics class. It was lopsided. It was a strange green color. It was the most beautiful bowl I had ever seen. And under it she wrote, "Look what I made, Mom." And I wrote back, "It's beautiful." I did not ask what she was going to use it for. I did not ask if she had taken pictures from other angles. I did not ask anything. I just told her it was beautiful. That is the entire story. If you are watching this and you recognize yourself in it, on either side, I want to say something to you directly. If you are a parent who is realizing, maybe for the first time, that you might be the woman or the man I have been describing, I want you to know that the recognition is the beginning. It is not the end, it is not a verdict, it is a door, and going through it is the hardest thing you will ever do, and it is the only thing worth doing. And if you are an adult child who has had to have a version of the conversation Ren had with me, or who has been working up the courage to have it, who has been carrying it for years, who is wondering if your parent will ever be able to hear it, I want you to know that you are not exaggerating. You are not too sensitive. You saw what you saw. The love being real does not erase the shape of it.
Yeah.
You are allowed to grieve a parent who is still alive. You are allowed to ask for what you needed and never got. You are allowed to walk away, and you are allowed, if and when you are ready, to walk back. I have one question, and I want to ask it of everyone watching, because I genuinely want to know. Have you ever had to be called out by your own child, or have you ever had to call out a parent? What happened when the conversation ended? Did anyone change? Did anything? I'll be in the comments. I'll read what you write. I won't try to fix it. I'm just going to sit with you. That, I think, is the whole job.